I want to bring in now international affairs analyst Dr. Adi Omale. He joins us from the nation's capital, Abuja. Dr. Omale, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Good evening, and I'm pleased to be on Channels Television.
As always, we appreciate your analysis on the program. Today, we're looking forward to readouts of that conversation between the U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. No details yet have emerged as to what has been said, although we're reading that they've been speaking for about 90 minutes now. What do you think has gone on within that period of time between the two?
Well, I think it's a good omen that finally we are back to the negotiation table. The two leaders are using their personal diplomacy skills to ensure that by the time they speak to each other, we are very positive that certain developments will be arrived at that may lead to the ceasefire. I know that Russia has their reservation of the ceasefire, so also Ukraine. But I think with Donald Trump's being eager to bring out a ceasefire, that is a very good development. And I think both Ukraine and Russia should cooperate with the U.S. president to ensure that the ceasefire is achieved. The whole world is waiting eagerly to get the results of the phone conversation between the two powerful leaders of the world. And I think that the key issues that are going to be discussed, though they are still shrouded in secrecy, at the end of the day, I am very positive that some headway will be made and ceasefire restored.
Well, that is everybody's hope, but we know it's not going to be that easy because the Russian president did lay out a number of conditions for this ceasefire and peace to be in existence between Russia and Ukraine. And one of them is for Ukraine never to join NATO, never to attempt joining NATO. Ukraine must remain a neutral state even after this war. What do you make of that? I mean, I know that the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky really wanted to bring Ukraine out of Russia's shadow, but even that is hurting him now.
Well, according to Zelensky, the conditions that are being given by the Russian President Putin, there are conditions that to him are not achievable. So for Putin to say that Ukraine, that is a sovereign country, should not have the right to join any international organization it so wishes, that will not be fair to Ukraine. I have consistently said that Russia should tone down its opposition to Ukraine joining NATO. And my premise of holding that view is because many of the neighbors of Russia are already members of NATO. Georgia is a member of NATO. Armenia is a member of NATO, and several other countries that have shared boundaries with Russia. So why is Ukraine's own very different? And so to that extent, I don't think that condition as set out by Putin is something that is worth talking about. Moreover, I don't think the world has transcended beyond once you have somebody as your neighbor, you think that you are secure. No, somebody can stay 1,000 miles off and still attack you. Gone are the days that in these days of hypersonic missiles, you must not necessarily have boundary with somebody before you can attack that person. So I do not think that stopping Ukraine from joining NATO should be a rigid condition that Russia will hold on to. Secondly, I still believe that Putin will understand that the international system, we are now in a globalized world, and Ukraine, being a sovereign country, can decide to form alliance or join any other country, irrespective of how Moscow feels. So that is my view on that matter. And I sincerely believe that Russia should be able to tone down so that most of these bloodshed can be avoided. Some other conditions that is given, yes, I agree that since the Cox region was taken over by Ukraine, I believe that it's a Russian territory, so it should go back to Russia. At the same time, Russia should also consider leaving Crimea and other Ukrainian areas that they have annexed, so that it will be a give and take negotiation at the end of the day. Issues of land, issues of assets, issues of power plant, and so on are some of the things that are going to be discussed with the conversation with Putin. And I believe that at the end of the day, a headway will be made. On the issue of power plant, I want to say that since 2022, the Zaporizhzhia power plant or whatever that have been taken over by the Russians will have to be considered back to the Ukrainians so that they can benefit from the power. The Russian forces have been occupying that plant now for close to 2 years. And I think it will be in the interest of Ukraine for Russia to vacate that power plant. So I think it's a good thing. It is better to Georgia than to war. And I think this also brings to the fore the maxim that all wars at the end of the day end on the negotiation table. At the end of the day, every war, no matter how militarily equipped you are, at the end of the day, it is negotiations of this nature as we are witnessing between the parties involved and the intervention of the United States that can lead to peace.
Yes, but I know someone is wondering why Ukraine has to give up so much for peace between it and Russia. They're going to lose territories. I mean, those four regions that were annexed by Russia more than a year ago, Donetsk, Luhansk, and two other areas in northern Ukraine have already been annexed by Russia. You already have citizens there who already pledge allegiance to Russia. And then there's also of course, Ukraine giving up its ability to and right to join any international organization. Then we're also talking power plants and so on. It does seem that at the end of this, Ukraine would be much of the loser. But why does that have to be so with Russia, which is already a really big country with so much power, militarily, economically, and every otherwise? Why would Ukraine have to suffer at the end of the day?
Well, it is a tyranny of the oppressors. I am surprised that under Biden, America did not tolerate what Russia is doing in Ukraine in any form. And that you could see the type of support that the Americans under Biden gave to Zelensky and Ukraine. Also, I must commend the European Union and other countries that have supported Ukraine in this war. You know that militarily, if you compare Ukraine and Russia, definitely Ukraine is the underdog. So that Ukraine has held on for 3 years is a surprise to a lot of analysts. However, as you mentioned, certain lands, certain areas have been forcibly taken over by the bully superpower, Russia. And in this negotiation, I would have loved, at the end of the day, where Russia will pull back and will return to the pre-2022 boundary of Ukraine and pre-2022 boundary between Russia and Ukraine. To me, that would be a fair deal. But insisting that Ukraine will lose Kharkiv, will lose most of the areas of Donbass, and lose, and also in addition to Crimea that it lost in 2014, will not be a fair deal as far as I'm concerned. And if that happens, it underscores the fact that Ukraine's sovereignty has been severely breached. and it would have gone against several United Nations resolutions that have been passed. But if that will bring lasting peace, so be it. But Ukraine, at the end of the day, would have been at the receiving end, which to me would not be very fair. In this negotiation, what I want to see happen, or what I feel should happen, is that America should insist on the pre-2022 boundaries of both countries while they discuss other issues. While Zelensky has been insisting that they should go back to the 2024 boundary, with Crimea being part of Ukraine. But as it is now, with the negotiation going on now, he seems to be negotiating from a very, very weak position because of the military incursion by the Russians. But again, you cannot, in international politics, just like football, you cannot say it is over until it is over. With the last few days ago, Ukraine was able to carry out drone strike right into the heart of Moscow. So we cannot sit down now and reach a conclusion. Both parties are trying to negotiate from the position of strength, and they are working very hard, either on the battlefield and also militarily, to ensure that by the time they come to the negotiation table, they can negotiate from the position of strength. Trump alluded to Zelensky some few weeks ago that he was negotiating from a position of weakness, but it can be seen that all is not over for Ukraine, with the massive support it's enjoying from across the world, from the European countries like Britain, France, Poland, and so on, and even from Asian countries like Saudi Arabia. It is clear that the world is watching with keen interest on what is happening between Ukraine and Russia. So at the end of the day, I am very confident that there will be a middle-of-the-road approach. Ukraine definitely cannot lose the entire of those territories that we have mentioned. Yes, it might lose some, maybe very small or very few, just to save the face of Putin, who has embarked on a so-called military adventure that he never knew would have taken a toll, this type of toll, on the Russian economy and on the Russian military. So I think that the Americans will also want to see that certain concessions are made to Putin, so that at least to save his face.
Right.
If not, I think this is a disaster for Russia.
Yes, but I'm also thinking, and I'm wondering if this is what, it looks like to you. It appears that the Russian president does have, his own position changing on the West's power over the rest of the world. Somehow he feels that it does supersede that Western dominance. And I'm saying this because the Russian president addressed Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs earlier today, where he was, and people were speculating he might not make the call with U.S. President Donald Trump. He spoke about Western dominance slipping away and new centers of global growth emerging. And it says this is a long-term trend. He was dismissive of the G7 group. He said, why is it so big? No matter where you look on the map, you can see it. He accused the West of putting undue and unfair pressure on Russia, particularly by imposing sanctions. According to him, even if the other side makes a gesture of some sort, lifting or relaxing something, you can expect them to find another way of putting pressure or putting a spoke in our wheel. Do you think that the Russian president thinks, this war has also changed the direction, of world dominance, where he sees Western dominance diminishing, Western dominion diminishing, and then he becoming the superpower that the U.S. is gradually trying to become, I guess, under Trump at the moment?
Well, my take on your question is that this Ukrainian conflict has thrown Russia back into reckoning in international politics. Hitherto, Russia was not reckoned with after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the breakaway of several countries from the old Soviet Union. But Putin has been able to galvanize Russia to have a voice. As a permanent member of the Security Council, he has been able to galvanize Russia, to put them on the map, and to also to become relevant within the international system. And that is why it is instructive that with the approach of Donald Trump, it has further given Russia the confidence that it can be a major player within the international system going forward. So certainly, the unipolar status of the world is becoming to tilt a little bit. Don't forget that the influence of China in tandem with Russia and some other countries has already formed the BRICS countries, which has made a major challenge to Western domination of world affairs. However, the BRICS, it will take a BRICS a long time to be able to catch up. However, with this newfound romance between the US and Russia, it needs to be seen what one can make of how China should be feeling at this point in time. Whether this new romance between Russia and US will isolate China from Russia is something that we are going to be looking at in the years to come. But definitely, the international politics is all about alliances and shifting of alliances and so on. So it is not today, right from the First World War, Second World War, there have always been shifts in alliances. So it is good for the international system. Trump has been able to look at areas where the Americans have been coming very weak, and he's trying to assert America's influence in other ways. Whether he is right or not, the time will tell whether he is right or not. But a lot of Western scholars believe that Trump is trusting Russia too quickly. Trump is trusting that he can do a deal with Putin and with Russia too quickly. He needs to tread with caution. Don't forget that Russia has been a major ally of Iran and China and several other groupings that have been anti-US and the Western world. And so Trump needs to dine with a long spoon with Putin. And with what is happening in Ukraine now and the position Trump is pushing, if he had not stepped back in the last few weeks to begin to look at the issues from the advice that a lot of people are giving, his initial brash approach of intimidating Ukraine and wholesale supporting Putin to take over and annex Ukraine would have been a disaster for American foreign policy. But I'm happy that he's retracing his step and he's saying that what everybody is saying about putting too much trust and confidence in Putin will be counterproductive to the Americans. So, in the nutshell, America definitely, with what is happening, is taking the lead in terms of restoring peace to the world. But again, America is also trying to promote the influence of a competitor. And that is where the worry is coming from. After Ukraine, what next? Will Putin put his eyes on annexing other neighbors, or will he put his eyes on supporting other anti-American and anti-Western interests? So it's time that will tell. But I am also of the view that Putin must be looked at with a lot of suspicion. Putin must not be trusted, and he has to be looked up with a lot of suspicion.
I know that there are a lot of countries that are taking their cues from what's going on. This meeting this phone call between Donald Trump and President Putin will determine the course of international politics, probably change a number of things, how nations see weaker nations. But there are some who are also hoping that, the U.S. and the Russian president get along for the benefit of the rest of the world. They feel countries like Hungary, beg your pardon, the foreign minister saying that he hopes that both leaders could come to an agreement about normalizing U.S.-Russia relations. They said for the past 3 years they hadn't had, they'd been walking on eggshells around Russia and around peace on the continent. They're hoping that, when the U.S. and Russia do mend their relationship, then there could be peace on the continent. But do you agree with Donald Trump that Joe Biden threw away $350 billion at Ukraine and achieved nothing? Because that's something he's riding on and saying, he could fix that, he could do better than the previous government.
I don't agree with Trump on that. If Biden had not taken the decisions he took as at that time to provide military support, to provide financial support to Ukraine, Russia would have easily overrun Ukraine, and we will not be where we are today. So I must give kudos to Biden and to the rest of the European countries for the initial pressure on Russia so that Russia wouldn't have annexed Ukraine in an easy way, the way it went at that time. So I disagree totally with Trump. $60 billion was well spent and it was worthwhile, and it has taught Russia a lesson, and not just Russia, to others who might also have expansionist tendencies, that the world cannot sit down and watch people violate the sovereignty, territorial sovereignty of nations the way Putin did brazenly. I am sure deep down in Putin's mind, he would have regretted trying to annex Ukraine the way he did. If he knew that the war was going to last this long, I doubt if he would have embarked on such ending. His intelligence probably failed him by not adequately telling him that, by not looking at the support that Ukraine was able to gather from across the globe. And so, to me, I must give kudos to Biden, and I must give kudos to the European Union and other countries that have supported Ukraine. One thing that is very clear is that Ukraine is an independent country that deserves to exist, and there's no reason under the sun why Russia should take it upon itself to annex Ukraine. And I must also commend the boldness and the doggedness in which the Ukrainians have resisted this adventure by Putin and his army. I don't even want to go to the level of involvement of North Korea and some other rogue states, as they are called, in the conflict. But that is why the Americans must be cautious in this conflict, because with the involvement of North Korea and some of these states that tilt towards dictatorship, it is very worrisome, very, very, very worrisome. And the democratic world must take note of what is really happening. And Trump, and that is why I was sounding a note of warning earlier on, that Trump must be very, very cautious. If you are dining with the devil, you have to dine with a long spoon.
Mm-hmm. I hope he's listening. I hope he has the right people around him, giving him the advice that he needs to chart this relationship with the Russian president. Dr. Adeomale, thank you so much for this extensive analysis on the situation between Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you, Amarachi, and thanks for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate Channels Television.